Chemical tests for water. Chemical tests for water. Using cobalt-2 chloride. Cobalt-2 chloride turns blue to pink on the addition of water. This test is usually done using cobalt chloride paper. The equation is anhydrous cobalt-2 chloride plus water hydrated cobalt-2 chloride. CoCl2S plus 6H2OL CoCl2.6H2OS. Blue-pink. Test for water using cobalt chloride paper which turns pink in the presence of water. Using copper-2 sulfate. Anhydrous copper-2 sulfate turns white to blue on the addition of water. The equation is anhydrous copper-2 sulfate plus water hydrated copper-2 sulfate. CuSO4S plus 5H2OL CuSO4.5H2OS. White-blue. Test for water using anhydrous copper-2 sulfate which turns blue in the presence of water. Exam tip. Core students do not need to know the symbol equations. Purity of water. Testing for purity. Pure substances melt and boil at specific and sharp temperatures. Water has a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius and a melting point of 0 degrees Celsius. Mixtures have a range of melting and boiling points as they consist of different substances that melt or boil at different temperatures. Melting and boiling points data can therefore be used to determine the purity of water. Impurities tend to increase the boiling point of water, so impure water will boil at temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius. Impurities tend to decrease the melting point of water, so impure water will melt at temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius. Distilled water. Distilled water is water that has been heated to form a vapor, and then condensed back to a liquid. It contains very few impurities. Distilled water is used in practical chemistry because of its high purity. Tap water contains more impurities which could interfere with chemical reactions, so is typically not used. Substances in water from natural sources. We use water in many aspects of our everyday life. Domestic uses. For drinking, cooking, gardening and general sanitation. Agricultural uses. As a drink for animals and watering crops. Industrial uses. As a solvent, as a coolant and heated to make steam used to generate electricity. Water is found in natural sources such as lakes, rivers and underground water sources groundwater. A rock that stores water is known as an aquifer. Water from natural sources may contain a variety of different substances, including dissolved oxygen, metal compounds, plastics, sewage, harmful microbes, nitrates from fertilizers, phosphates from fertilizers and detergents. Many of these substances enter water sources when rain falls and washes them into lakes, rivers or groundwater. Some of these substances are naturally occurring but many are a direct result of human activities. Exam tip. Despite the term, natural source, water from these sources may contain lots of impurities and harmful substances and should not be confused with water which is clean and ready for use. Beneficial and harmful substances in water. Some of the substances which may be found in natural water sources are beneficial and others may have harmful effects. Beneficial substances include dissolved oxygen, essential for aquatic life. Metal compounds. Some provide essential minerals which are necessary for life, such as calcium and magnesium. Potentially harmful substances include metal compounds. Some are toxic like aluminium and lead. Some plastics. These may be harmful to aquatic life in many ways, e.g. getting trapped in plastic waste, dying of starvation as their stomach is filled with plastic. Sewage contains harmful microbes which can cause disease. Nitrate and phosphates from fertilizers. These can promote the growth of aquatic plant life which leads to deoxygenation of water. Ultimately, this can cause damage to aquatic life in a process called eutrophication. You do not need to know the details of this process. Exam tip. Metal compounds can be both beneficial and harmful. It depends on the metal within the compound, e.g. calcium, magnesium, potassium and sodium are all metals which are essential for life. Harmful metals include lead, arsenic and mercury. Water treatment. Water supply. Water is taken from rivers, reservoirs or underground water sources groundwater. A rock that stores water is known as an aquifer. Water treatment. Untreated water contains soluble and insoluble impurities. Insoluble impurities include soil, pieces of plants and other organic matter. Soluble impurities include dissolved calcium, metallic compounds and inorganic pollutants. Water is pumped into sedimentation tanks where the water is allowed to stand for a few hours. Mud, sand and other particles will fall to the bottom of the tank due to gravity and form a layer of sediment in a process called sedimentation. Filtration is the process used to remove smaller particles by passing the water through layers of sand and gravel filters that trap solid particles. Water can also be passed through carbon in the form of charcoal to remove tastes and odors. Bacteria and other microorganisms are too small to be trapped by the filters, so chlorination is used. This involves the careful addition of chlorine to the water supply, which kills bacteria and other unwanted microorganisms. Cholera and typhoid are examples of bacterial diseases which can arise from the consumption of untreated water. Diagram showing the stages in the treatment of water. Exam tip. Exam questions on water treatment often focus on the purpose of each stage of the process. Fertilizers. N, P, K fertilizers. Fertilizers contain nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus. Nitrogen makes chlorophyll and protein and promotes healthy leaves. Potassium promotes growth and healthy fruit and flowers. Phosphorus promotes healthy roots. Fertilizer compounds contain the following water-soluble ions. Ammonium ions, NH4+ and nitrate ions, NO3, are sources of soluble nitrogen. Phosphate ions, PO43, are a source of soluble phosphorus. Most common potassium compounds dissolve in water to produce potassium ions, K+. Common fertilizer compounds include ammonium nitrate, NH4NO3, ammonium phosphate, NH4, 3PO4, potassium sulfate, K2SO4. Ammonium salts and nitrates are commonly used as fertilizers. Different fertilizers contain different amounts of fertilizer compounds, so each contains different proportions of nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus. Exam tip. You may be asked to select a compound or combination of compounds from a list which would be the most effective as a fertilizer. Look for the compound or combination of compounds that contain the most elements from nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. The composition of air. The chart below shows the approximate percentages by volume of the main gases in unpolluted, dry air. Pie chart showing the composition of clean dry air. Uses of air. The gases available in the air have many important applications. The noble gases are used in many applications, e.g. helium is used to fill balloons, argon is used in tungsten light bulbs, krypton is used in lasers for eye surgery. Oxygen is used in steel making, welding and breathing apparatus. Nitrogen is used in food packaging, the production of ammonia and in the production of silicon chips. Oxygen and nitrogen are separated from the air by fractional distillation. Investigating the percentage of oxygen in air. The percentage of oxygen in the air can be investigated by passing a known quantity of air over a metal. The oxygen in the air will react with the metal, forming a metal oxide. The oxygen will be removed from the air and the volume of the air with the oxygen removed can be measured. An example of the apparatus that can be used to investigate this is shown below. Method. Heat the copper using a Bunsen burner. Push the plunger of the syringe containing air, forcing the air into the other plunger until all of the air has transferred. Push the air back from the now filled plunger to the other plunger. Repeat this several times for about 3 minutes. The copper will turn black as copper reacts with the oxygen in the air and copper oxide is produced. Allow the apparatus to cool. Ensure all the gas is in one syringe and record the volume of gas. The percentage of oxygen in the air can be calculated from the results. Worked example. In the experiment above, the starting volume of air was 50.0 cc of air and the final volume of air was 39.5 cm 3. Calculate the percentage of oxygen in the air. Step 1. Calculate the volume of oxygen in 50.0 cc of air. Volume of oxygen in air equals starting volume, final volume. Equals 50. 0 to 39.5 equals 10.5 cc. Step 2. Calculate the percentage of oxygen in air. Percentage of oxygen in air equals 21.0%. Did this video help you? Yes, no. Air pollution. In addition to the gases present naturally in our atmosphere, other gases are present due to human activities and are classed as air pollutants. Carbon dioxide. Sources. Complete combustion of carbon-containing fuels such as fossil fuels, e.g. the complete combustion of methane. CH4 plus 2O2 right-pointing arrow CO2 plus 2H2O. Adverse effects. Increases global warming, which leads to climate change. Carbon monoxide. Sources: incomplete combustion of carbon-containing fuels such as fossil fuels, e.g. incomplete combustion of gasoline. C8H18 plus 9O2 right pointing arrow 5CO plus 2CO2 plus 9H2O. Adverse effects: toxic, combining with hemoglobin in the blood and prevents it from carrying oxygen. Particulates. Sources: incomplete combustion of carbon-containing fuels such as fossil fuels can also produce particulates of carbon, soot, e.g. the incomplete combustion of methane can produce CO and C. 2CH4 plus 3O2 right pointing arrow 2CO plus 4H2O. CH4 plus O2 right pointing arrow C plus 2H2O. Adverse effects: respiratory problems and cancer. Methane. Sources: waste gases from digestive processes of animals, decomposition of vegetation, bacterial action in swamps, rice paddy fields and landfill sites. Adverse effects: increases global warming, which leads to climate change. Oxides of nitrogen. Sources: reaction of nitrogen with oxygen in the presence of high temperatures, e.g. in car engines, high-temperature furnaces and when lightning occurs. It is also a product of bacterial action in the soil. Adverse effects: produces photochemical smog. Dissolves in rain to form acid rain which causes corrosion to metal structures, buildings and statues made of carbonate rocks, damage to aquatic organisms. Pollutes crops and water supplies, irritates lungs, throats and eyes and causes respiratory problems. Sulfur dioxide. Sources: combustion of fossil fuels containing sulfur compounds. Power stations are a major source of sulfur dioxide. Adverse effects: dissolves in rain to form acid rain with similar effects as the acid rain caused by oxides of nitrogen. How acid rain is produced. Exam tip: complete and incomplete combustion of hydrocarbons produce different products. Complete combustion occurs in excess oxygen and produces CO2 and H2O. Incomplete combustion occurs in oxygen-deficient conditions and produces Colorado, H2O and sometimes particulates of carbon, soot. Effects of greenhouse gases. Extended. The sun emits energy in the form of radiation that enters the Earth's atmosphere. Some thermal energy is reflected from the Earth's surface. Most thermal energy is absorbed and re-emitted back from the Earth's surface. The energy passes through the atmosphere where some thermal energy passes straight through and is emitted into space. But some thermal energy is absorbed by greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane and is re-emitted in all directions. This reduces the thermal energy lost into space and traps it within the Earth's atmosphere, keeping the Earth warm. This process is known as the greenhouse effect. As the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere increases due to human activity, more thermal energy is trapped within the Earth's atmosphere, causing the Earth's average temperature to rise, global warming. This process is called the enhanced greenhouse effect. Diagram showing how the greenhouse effect occurs. Consequences of global warming. Climate change due to the increase in Earth's temperature. Water levels will rise as glaciers melt because of high temperatures, causing flooding in low-lying countries. Extinction of species due to the destruction of natural habitats. Migration of species as they will move to areas that are more habitable, no droughts. Spread of diseases caused by warmer climate. Loss of habitat due to climate change, animals that live on glaciers or in low-lying countries. Reducing the effects of environmental issues. The effects of climate change and acid rain are far-reaching and strategies are needed to reduce their impact. Dealing with climate change. The production of greenhouse gases needs to be reduced drastically to avoid or at least slow climate change. CO2 emissions can be reduced by using hydrogen and renewable energy supplies such as solar or wind energy instead of burning fossil fuels. Reducing the amount of livestock farming would decrease the methane emissions produced from digestion in animals. Planting more trees would remove more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Dealing with acid rain. Acid rain is caused by oxides of nitrogen and sulfur dioxide. The effects of acid rain can be reduced by decreasing the amount of oxides of nitrogen and sulfur dioxide that are produced. Catalytic converters in vehicles can be used to remove oxides of nitrogen. Emissions of sulfur dioxide can be reduced by either using fuels which contain low levels of sulfur. Flue gas desulfurization. This involves reacting the sulfur dioxide emitted from burning fuels containing sulfur with calcium oxide, therefore removing it from the flue gas. Exam tip. There are many other ways that carbon dioxide, methane, oxides of nitrogen and sulfur dioxide can be reduced, e.g. by reducing energy usage to reduce CO2 emissions, but it is only the examples stated above that you need to know. Oxides of nitrogen in car engines. Extended oxides of nitrogen. These compounds, No and number 2, are formed when nitrogen and oxygen react in the high pressure and temperature conditions of internal combustion engines and blast furnaces. Exhaust gases also contain unburned hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide. Cars are fitted with catalytic converters which form a part of their exhaust systems. Their function is to render these exhaust gases harmless. Catalytic converters. They contain a series of transition metal catalysts including platinum and rhodium. The metal catalysts are in a honeycomb within the converter to increase the surface area available for reaction. A series of redox reactions occurs which neutralizes the pollutant gases. Carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide. 2CO plus O2 right pointing arrow 2CO2. Oxides of nitrogen are reduced to N2 gas. 2NO right pointing arrow N2 plus O2. 2NO2 right pointing arrow N2 plus 2O2. A single reaction can summarize the reaction of nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide within a catalytic converter. 2NO plus 2CO right pointing arrow N2 plus 2CO2. Catalytic converters are designed to reduce the polluting gases produced in car exhausts. Unburned hydrocarbons can also be oxidized to carbon dioxide and water. C8H18 plus 12.5 O2. Right pointing arrow 8CO2 plus 9H2O. Exam tip. Whilst carbon dioxide does not have direct adverse effects to our health, it is a greenhouse gas and is a major contributor to climate change. Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is an endothermic reaction in which energy is transferred from the environment to the chloroplasts in green plants to make glucose. The reactants for this reaction are carbon dioxide and water. Glucose and oxygen are produced. Chlorophyll, found in chloroplasts, and energy from light are required for this reaction to occur. The word equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide and water producing glucose and oxygen during photosynthesis.